we seek to educate and inspire students and faculty of the importance of sound. What is the significance of sound in a theater setting? What is the physiology of sound, and who are the people behind it? What would life be without sound?
Frankly, living without sight, I think, would be a very tough thing to do. I think not being able to hear would be absolutely unbearable.
Back in Shakespeare's day, people used to say, I'm going to go hear a play.
We're able to bring music in subtly, sound effects, environmental effects. We're able to place sound around an audience in a very subtle way that helps enhance their experience.
You know, it's one of the major tools of producing any kind of theater.
Sound is very important in establishing the mood and the time and place.
By redesigning the Bowen Theater Sound Booth and updating its repertory speaker locations, embark with us on a significant journey to creating a rich and pleasant sound experience at the university's oldest theater, the Bowen Sound Booth Project.
IDD. Sound bottle.
Hi, my name is Lindsay White, and I am the Assistant Technology Manager for the Department of Theater. I work under Jim Knapp in the department, and I'm involved in this project through my work-study position under Jim. Everybody involved in this project has some interest in sound. This particular project has to do with rebuilding the Bowen sound system from scratch, tearing it all down, building it all up, designing it in AutoCAD and on paper. The most challenging thing for me related to this project is figuring out how to supervise students and lead them in such a large-scale process. A lot of people involved in the class are taking the Theater 4000 Independent Study class. Several of the people involved in this project are work-study students under Jim Knapp.
Hi, my name is Ruth Laketic. I'm taking 4000 Independent Study class to learn more about sound engineering. It's because I've been doing community theater for 20 years and it has grown from a manual system to a computerized system, and each community theater has a different system, so it'd be nice to know when I walk in what I'm walking into and how to fix things or adjust things accordingly to get the proper sound that I need.
I am Zack Bailey. I am an upcoming senior at The Ohio State University, and I am taking this Sound 4000 level class with Jim Knapp. Really just to enhance my ability as a stage manager. I stage managed both in the department at OSU as well as in the community around Columbus. And I've come to realize that sound is something that I don't know anything about. I'm always relying on my sound technicians or designers to just troubleshoot and whatnot, and, and if the sound doesn't work, I'm just, hey, can somebody help me? Because I don't know.
Hi, my name is Lee Williams, and I'm a Program 60 student here at Ohio State. The last few years I've been lucky enough to take classes here in the theater department, especially with Jim Knapp's sound class. I am retired, and I enjoy learning. I enjoy learning new things. I think theater is very interesting. I've got a graphics and an art background, so theater is very creative, so I'm obviously attracted to that. This summer, I'm involved in the Bowen Sound Booth rebuild project, and I look forward to helping them as far as engineering, designing a new system, helping them tear out the old system, and helping them build a new system.
Bowen Theater is a 250-seat thrust stage. That means it's got audience on all three sides. It's a black box with a stage built in the middle of it and audience seated on three sides of that stage. That presents some pretty unique challenges in terms of sound. We've got audience scattered around a wide area. Everything starts at the source and works through this process. It always flows in the same direction, from source down to speaker. From the mixer, it always feeds out to the amplifier. From the amplifier, it always feeds into the speaker, right? So no matter what's going on, it always follows this direction. I was lucky as a high school student to get involved with a couple of gentlemen, John Izzo and Andy Nazaro, who were passionate about theater. They ran a pretty extraordinary group when I was in high school. It was mostly middle school kids doing musicals and having a good time, and they found a joy in working with that age students that was infectious. It caused me to think about theater potentially as a career. as an undergrad. I completed a theater major, but at that point I also thought I might become a history teacher. It's the way it goes sometimes. And I have to say I'd probably make a pretty mediocre historian, but I do pretty well in theater, at least I think I do. As a result of that experience, as an undergrad, I got involved in several shows doing sound, The Wizard of Oz, The Seagull, Ragtime, and a number of other shows, and discovered that the reaction of my audience was pretty phenomenal. When I got to OSU, I was hired here as an instructor in technical direction, how to build scenery, and worked at that for probably about 16 years. In 2004, we did a show called Oxygen, and I was asked to do the sound design for that. It was a pretty remarkable show. And at the end of it, my then boss, Mark Shonda, pulled me aside and said, "You seem to have a good time. Would you like to be responsible for sound design from now on?" And I said, "Sure," little realizing exactly what I was getting myself into.
A lot of the pre-design work and design work was done with the program using AutoCAD. It's a program that I'm fairly new to, but one that I've seen a lot of the graduate students and other students in my class using quite often. And so what you can do with AutoCAD is you can take an idea or a concept and draft it out to scale, or you can draft it out, with very specific measurements. And that's exactly what we did before we started installing a lot of the equipment up in the sound booth. And we're still currently using it as we are installing the system right now, and as we go to the next step of actually listening to the sound and seeing what we've created.
Well, usually we use Audition to take sound. We go out to public websites like Freesound and Sound Dogs, and we select sounds that we want to use. These are giant files of sounds that we can use, and we then can take those and manipulate them. Sometimes we want to change the pitch a little. Sometimes there's dead space at the beginning and end, and we want to cut that off so that the cue starts exactly when we want it. This is a program that then allows you to assign the sound to specific speakers. It allows you to adjust the volume, and it then sets it up as a cue so that a soundboard operator can just hit a go button and it will then load and play the next sound.
What is the main difference between a sound designer and sound engineer, and why are they both important?
I often think of it as the artistic side and the technical side. Neither side can exist on its own.
The engineer is the one that makes it happen. If you don't have the engineers putting the speakers out there and getting them hooked up, and they're the ones responsible for the equipment and making sure that the sounds that the designer wants to have are where they need to be and that they're clear and they're crisp. You have problems with loose wires, maybe you have speakers that aren't working the way you want to, and so you depend on your engineer to make the sound happen how and where you want it.
The artistic side, the sound designer who works with the director, the cast, the other designers, works within the acoustics of the space to make the show work at a very fundamental level, so our audience has an enhanced experience without that experience detracting from the enjoyment of the show. Designer is the artistic side, providing the audience the best possible aesthetic experience, while the engineer is the technical side, providing the audience with the best technical and acoustic experience. Six years ago, we did a rebuild, just a really brief touch-up of the system that was in here. And then over time, that rebuild slowly had too many things added to it, fixed, changed, rearranged. It had too many idiosyncrasies that were cropping up as a result of all the various shows we did in that space. We've started adding a great number of additional speakers to the space as we do individual shows, and each of those situations caused us some difficulties and errors in how the system was operating. We've been talking about, if we look at the Bowen stage, we've been talking about placement of speakers. The students during the redesign process figured out the placement of the permanent speakers. They're often called the repertory sound plot. The rep plot contains 3 main clusters, one aimed at each of the 3 seating sections. Then we also incorporate fill speakers to fill in the back so that we get an even distribution of sound across the entire audience. If you don't evenly distribute the sound across the audience, often the people sitting closest to the speakers are overwhelmed by the sound, while the people sitting furthest away from the speakers have a much different experience. They can't hear or miss quite a bit of the sound. So speaker placement is pretty crucial. The students determined the best location. We actually brought speakers in and tested various locations to see where the repertory speakers should be, the main clusters, and then where the fill speakers should be. Again, the acoustics in Bowen are quite good, but they're not perfect. What we discovered over time is that we were having difficulty balancing the mains and the fills in each of the 3 seating sections. Each of them needed something slightly different. So we invested a little money in something called a drive rack. That's this guy sitting right behind me with a little blue screen here. The drive rack allows us to shape the sound coming out of each of the speakers. This particular drive rack also includes something called RTA, or real-time audio. It allows us to place a microphone where the audience is. We'll take quite a few measurements around that area, and then it figures out the echo reflections that the audience is likely to encounter, and figures out how to reshape the sound for us to fit within that space. The result is actually this little graph. This is the result of all of the testing. It shows what frequencies are removed. You can see it down on this side. Other frequencies are enhanced as we move across from the low frequencies to the high frequencies. It was really helpful. However, when we got to the end of it, we discovered that it also flattened out the sound. The low frequencies were a lot higher than we had anticipated, and the high frequencies were lower than we had anticipated. The amount of high frequency was removed considerably. So after we were done with that, using the human ear, we are much better able to balance those two out. We added some of the high frequencies, removed some of the low frequencies. So the room has some life in it now.
What does it take to put on a successful production?
Well, theater is all about collaboration. So, for example, I could not go into my office and shut the door and make theater. So it's all about working with other people. So it takes a great team who are interested in working with other people. And for that reason also, it takes time. Because as we know, when we're working with other people, it takes time to forge those relationships and speak to each other and come up with solutions.
As a director, what are your main duties and goals of the show?
I think one way to think of a director is as a communicator in charge. So making sure that there's communication between everyone involved, making sure that that people are talking with one another and they all have the same idea. And so the director is also in charge of deciding, hopefully in collaboration with partners, what is the vision for the play? What's the best vision for the play? That can be affected by a number of things, including budget, including who your audience is, who your actors are there educational goals for designers or actors? So deciding, helping codify a vision that's going to work for that group of people and that audience at that time. So finding that concept that's going to work for the group. And then finding the style. And hopefully the style is something that the director can really do the push off the dock, like pushing a boat off the dock. But everybody together, then a good director will encourage people and inspire people to contribute to that style. So, I mean, the set that we're on now is very, we're looking at our budget concerns. We knew that it had to be simple and that it had to have a big impact to match the impact of the script. And so the style is very simple. And I think one of the most successful things about the production that we're doing is not only what the designers have brought and what the actors have brought to the work and the entire team, but the way that they have worked together. The way that they have not only done their own work, but also said, you know, if I put this particular media image on the screen, the media designer and the lighting designer need to speak with each other to make sure the light's not too close to the screen where it will ruin the media. Or if the media is going to be very bright, how will that affect the lighting design? So those two players in particular needed to be very, very communicative with each other. And in my conversations with each of them, I needed to have those words right on the tip of my tongue, where I say, but you should talk about this with the lighting designer, but you should talk about this with the media designer. So please be sure and do that. So communication, the director can really help that be an important concept within a whole artistic team, which the final thing on top of that is, it's sort of implied, but let me be implicit about it. It's very important to me as a director to help create a culture within the entire team that's one of inclusiveness. The person who hands out the program is just as important as the person who has the lead in the play. We need someone to hand out the program. So also it needs to be, the culture needs to be one where the assistant lighting designer can say, I have an idea, can I share that idea? And that person may give the team an idea that will snowball into this terrific, unique thing that not one person could have ever come up with on their own, but really took a bunch of people feeling free enough and safe enough in the culture, the artistic culture that we create in order to try something, to take a risk together. And yeah, so the culture is very important.
I find that one of the biggest challenges is describing sound. We're pretty good at describing sight and color and even to an extent costume. But sound is more abstract. It's very difficult. So that when my director said, okay, in this particular scene I want breathing, well, we tried 2 or 3 different styles of breathing in order to get what we wanted. For me to figure out what the director was looking for. Our first pass wasn't the kind of breathing she was looking for. So that mind meld, if you will, where you're trying to figure out what the director wants and trying to make that happen, that's a challenge there.
We really worked together to try to find the representation of technology through sound. So the sound designer, Eve Nordyke, she probably brought forward, I don't know, 30 beeps and blips and bops and finally we said, you know what, we've got to take an actual phone and record it because it all sounds so fakey. And again, like the truck, it's such a familiar object, it cannot be fakey.
We wanted the sound of the motor to come from the truck. We had a speaker under the hood, we had a speaker near the tailpipe, and we had different sounds coming out of those 2 places. So I really needed my engineer to understand what I wanted to do, what I was trying to accomplish.
It would feel disingenuous. And we're really asking audiences to go on quite a journey with us and talk about something very real. And so if we had a fake truck up here, or if we had fakey sounding delete sounds from your phone, or you got a Twitter thing, or you've received an email, or if it sounded fakey, it'd be like, it would pull us out of it completely. So again, it seems like a very easy thing. It's very kind of what's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't really draw attention to itself. It's kind of inconspicuous, but that's very, very crafted. We've also found in the script some amazing moments where the sound reflects, it amplifies the intensity of a moment. It also can reflect, at one point it reflects Chloe, the victim. There's a heartbeat, and the heartbeat begins as we are hearing the audio, which we chose to do live rather than record it because it's a more unusual choice. The lights help to suspend our disbelief. The actors are still, so their voices are very animated. They're very still. And underneath that, there is a heartbeat that goes. It's an alert heartbeat, an accelerating heartbeat, and then a racing heartbeat with the high buzz over the top of it. And it makes us, as an audience, it makes us really agitated. It helps us build. And the question that Eve Nordyke and I talked about was, whose heartbeat is that? And we decided that it was Chloe's, the girl who's a survivor. The sound in that way is putting us in her shoes in that moment. And it's a palpable feeling when you see it and feel it. And I think it really, again, I think it's really the key to the moment. And when the first time we teched it, did it with the sound and the lights and everything, the actors who were in the scene were really moved by it, and a couple of them had to step away because it was affecting them. And it was the sound. So, yeah, so it's really important in this piece.
Clearly labeling what each thing is an important part of what we do.
Alright, so for instance, so then we label the cable so we know which cable goes to what.